Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football for the Miami Hurricane fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of years, ending the month of February, going into the month of March. This is when historically Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes really start to dig their teeth in on the high school recruiting trail. And you look at the top targets that are emerging for Miami in the 2026 class. There's a lot to be excited about if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan, specifically on the offensive line. Right, a couple of years ago, guys like Samson Okunlola and Francis Mauigoa, we saw Mario Cristobal take some big swings and hit on the offensive line early in this 2026 cycle. You kind of get the similar feel where Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, they're going to be trying to add some elite talent on the offensive line. And quite frankly, I think that's why Miami was a little bit lighter on the offensive line in 2025, because they knew this 2026 class, when it comes to bona fide blue chip, high caliber offensive line prospects, it's really loaded. And you're going to see Mario Cristobal in Miami take some really big swings. Want to look at the offensive side of the football and talk about some top prospects we've seen emerge for Miami, kind of some names to know as we go into spring and summer visits. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just a shout out to the Miami Hurricane fans. That I don't think there's a fan base that follows the recruiting trail more than the Miami Hurricane fans. And it's something I love talking about. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys throughout the last couple of months and years, it means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, to the Miami fans, look, we could spend an hour and a half on the top prospects for Miami in this 2026 class. I know dang well that y'all got some names that you would like to see Miami go after in 2026. Let it fly in the comment section. We'll kind of add it to the notebook and talk about these guys as the next couple of weeks play out. Appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. And you got to start on the offensive line. This seems to be the position that Miami is going to be very, very aggressive with. I want to start with the number one offensive tackle in the country, Dex Jackson Cantwell. You don't see many of these kids come out of high school. I mean, this kid is a certified box checker in just about everything you look for. Athletic profile first, track and field, basketball, elite thrower in track and field. And you see that power output that you see in the track and field numbers, you see that translate to the football field. The power that this kid has in his hands, it's some of the more impressive, just kind of pure horsepower that you've seen an offensive lineman come out with over the last couple of years. He just routinely moves bodies off the line of scrimmage, the kind of offensive lineman that Mario Cristobal wants to build this unit around. Number two is 6'7.5", 300 pounds. And I'll tell you this, he is all of 6'7". And he's a phenomenal athlete. Basketball background, really, really clean feet. It's hard to find offensive linemen that have this kind of size that display this kind of athleticism. You go right down the checklist in terms of traits you want in an elite offensive tackle. I don't think there's a box that Jackson Cantwell does not check. Bona fide blue chip prospect that I think will be a first round NFL draft pick in 4 years. And it seems like Miami's going to push their chips in the middle of the table for Jackson Cantwell. Miami was not an early team in on Jackson Cantwell, have really put themselves in one of those prime contenders for a guy like Jackson Cantwell. And I'll say this, when Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal decide they want a kid, they oftentimes go out and get him. Jackson Cantwell, this is a very intriguing one to watch if you're a Miami Hurricane fan. Another one I'll talk about, Kenny Pepe, IMG Academy. You want to build a tackle in a laboratory, it probably looks like a guy like Kenny Pepe, 6'7", 320. Really, really good athlete for the size, very similar to a guy like Jackson Cantwell, elite length. I think what separates Jackson Cantwell and Kenny Pepe is Jackson Cantwell's power is kind of on another level. And I think if you want Kenny Pepe to become that five-star prospect, if you will, you want to see that overwhelming physicality develop in a guy like Kenny Pepe's game. And now the good thing is you can kind of teach that. Get him into the weight room, add a little bit more mass, add a little bit more strength, specifically in that lower half. There's a frame there that you can develop some real horsepower. But it starts with the frame and athleticism. It's hard to find kind of like we talked with Jackson Cantwell. It's hard to find these kind of guys that have this size and this athleticism. You develop a little bit more physicality. This is another one of those guys that you could see being a first-round NFL draft pick. And it seems like Miami's going to be playing a big role in Kenny Pepe's recruitment. Last offensive lineman that I'll talk about, there we could go for 45 minutes on the offensive lineman that Miami want to go out and get. Ben Cogden from Ohio, kind of a late riser. I think he will, at least from what I'm seeing, the offers that are flooding in for this kid, probably going to finish as a 4-star prospect. He is very raw. What you love about him is, one, the frame, 6'7". He's got to fill it out. He's only 270 pounds. Very good wrestler in the winter. And that's something I love with my offensive linemen, guys that have that functional athleticism. If you want to be a good wrestler, of which Ben is, you got to be a functional athlete and understand leverage. That's something you like. A lot of development that needs to take place. Nowhere near that polished product that a guy like Jackson Camwell is. I think the thing here is, hey, Alex Mirabal knows he can develop offensive linemen. This is a guy with a lot of raw traits that you like a lot. There's a lot of programs that are coming in on this kid over the last couple of weeks. Very intrigued to see how this one plays out over the next couple of weeks and months. Switching positions, going to go to the running back spot. Two names that I want to talk about. One, Derek Cooper. We've talked about Derek Cooper. Look, a lot of people saw him as a safety before his junior year. You turn on the junior year tape as a he's a running back, at least in my opinion. And I think a lot of programs are starting to treat him like a running back as well. I can see why teams liked him in the back end as a defensive back, because he's a little bit high waisted. Doesn't necessarily look like a running back on the film, but then you watch him run the football. Say, one, elite burst. I mean, the short area quicks are certainly there, and he can get to that top gear very, very quickly. And that's something that I love with running backs, where we spend so much time talking about 100-meter dash times for running backs. It's rare to see these running backs ever really get to their top gear playing that position. I'm more concerned with how well you deal with contact and how well what do your short area quicks look like? Derek Cooper's short area quicks are elite, can accelerate extremely well, and he's put together. I mean, 6'1", 205, and he looks all of 205 and deals with contact exceptionally well for being a little bit more of a high-waisted guy. I'm a huge fan of Derek Cooper. I think he'll be one of the best running backs in this 2026 class, right there in the backyard. I think Miami's going to pursue him in a big way. And if you start, I mean, what Mario Cristobal is doing is, hey, we're going to build a juggernaut of an offensive line. If you are a running back, you want to run behind the guys that Mario Cristobal is compiling in this offensive line. The other running back that I think is probably just interesting to monitor here is Javion Osborne. It was kind of the general vibe here was Texas and Michigan, and Texas probably the leader here. And Tashard Choice, Texas's running backs coach, moves up to the NFL. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Miami kind of pounced on that opportunity. Hey, this is an opportunity for us to get in on this recruitment. Now, do I think Miami's in that top contender tier right now? No, probably not. They're going to get him for a summer official visit. Another one of those running backs that checks a lot of boxes. It runs an 11-second 100 meters, so has that straight line speed, but similar to how we talked about Derek Cooper, really good short area quicks, thick lower half, deals with contact well. Another one of those, box checking running backs for Miami to seemingly make a move for. The wide receiver position, probably the most interesting position group to talk about. Let's start with probably one of the bigger names at the position group if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, and that's Calvin Russell. I'll say this, and I don't mean this in a bad way. It kind of reminds me of Hakeem Williams coming out of high school, like this big, and he's much bigger. Hakeem Williams, we thought he was like 6'4". He's really only 6'2". This big, long, just kind of like freaking nature pass catcher. And I mean that obviously in a very endearing way. Raw. The route tree's not super developed, just kind of a linear guy right now. And look, Hakeem Williams, I know, hasn't necessarily worked out for Florida State early in his career. That doesn't mean you don't grab guys like Hakeem Williams. Like, you were going to bet on a guy like Calvin Russell year after year after year, because more times than not, they're going to hit. And Calvin Russell is just blessed with just a ton of size, some long speed, legit hooper in the winters, like Division I offers. And you see that play out on the football field. When it's time to go up and make a play in the air with his frame and the coordination that he has from his basketball playing days, very, very good at the catch point. Bet on this kid every single day of the week. My favorite wide receiver that Miami, I really hope can end up landing is Jason Lopez. Look, not super thought of in terms of the recruiting rankings. I'm gonna just come out and say it. Xavier Restrepo vibes. Xavier Restrepo was another slept-on wide receiver because he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, but he was an elite route runner, and that translated to the college football level. Jason Lopez, very much the same. Been extremely productive at the high school ranks. I believe has over 4,000 receiving yards during his high school career. Why does he have those numbers? You might ask. Because he knows how to get open. Very similar conversation to Xavier Restrepo. And I think Miami just had so much success with this kind of wide receiver. Why not go after another one? Look, he's not going to get the offers and the 5 stars next to his name like a guy like Calvin Russell because he's only 5'10. He's only 165 pounds. He's not going to walk into a room and make a jaw drop. You turn on the tape and say, one, that the production is very hard to argue with. And then secondly, this kid just understands the position of wide receiver, gets open, works those short intermediate route trees exceptionally well. And one thing I do love is he's kind of good at the catch point too. You see him come down with some 50-50 balls. Now, I don't think that's going to be his MO when he gets to the collegiate ranks, but he can go up and make a play on the football if you need him to. Huge fan of Jason Lopez in this 2026 class. Last one I feel like we got to talk about, Chris Henry. We've seen Mario Cristobal shove Ryan Day in a locker a couple times on the recruiting trail. This could be one of those things. We all know that if Mario Cristobal and this Miami Hurricanes program want a guy bad enough, they will go out and get him, or at least die trying. And Chris Henry Jr., a guy that committed to Ohio State, USC and Oregon are pushing for him too out there in California. Miami's going to get a visit. I think there's a top 4 here. I wouldn't say Miami's the leader in the clubhouse here. I'd probably say Ohio State and Oregon are, but you're going to get an opportunity to maybe get some momentum in this one. I mean, he is a freaky dude. You know, again, there's a reason he's a 5-star prospect. 6'5", 205, very smooth mover. We'll see what happens with this recruitment over the next couple of weeks and months. Miami's going to swing big. I got to get into a little bit more film on some of these defensive prospects, so we'll talk about them ideally this weekend. And again, we're continue. It's early. The board's going to change. The targets are going to change. We'll keep having this conversation for the next couple of weeks and months. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.